In a small coastal town in the Philippines, where the waves hummed like old forgotten lullabies and the moonlight touched the sea as though comforting it, lived a 13-year-old boy named Lorenzo Santos. He was thin, sun-kissed, barefoot most days, and carried eyes that looked far older than his age, eyes full of stories, pain, and hope. Fighting to stay alive, Lorenzo lived in a tiny shack made of rusted sheet metal and salvaged plywood. When the wind was angry, the house shook like the heartbeat of someone afraid. His father had been a fisherman, but after a tragic accident at sea 2 years ago, Lorenzo became the only man left in the family. His mother washed clothes for neighbors, earning just enough to feed Lorenzo and his little sister, Leah. Music was the one thing that made Lorenzo's world feel less heavy. His father had owned an old, battered guitar, missing one string and scarred from years of use, but to Lorenzo, it was perfect. When everything hurt, he sang. When there wasn't enough food, he sang. When his sister cried at night, he sang her to sleep with the same songs his father once sang to him, but there was one song that meant more to him than any other, Hotel California. His father used to hum it when they would sit on the beach, watching the horizon swallow the sun. Someday, Anik, his father would say, your voice will take you farther than the sea ever took me. Those words echoed in Lorenzo's mind long after his father was gone. The AUDITION one fateful morning, a poster appeared on a pole outside the market, Philippines Got Talent Open Auditions. Lorenzo stared at it for a long time. He had watched clips of singing competitions on tiny phones borrowed from neighbors. He had dreamed of standing on that stage, but dreams felt expensive when your stomach often wasn't full. But that night, as his mother scrubbed shirts in a basin and his sister lay sleeping on the floor, Lorenzo whispered, "Ma, maybe this is my chance." His mother looked at him with tired eyes, eyes that had seen too many storms. But she also saw something else in him. A flame. Go, Anik, she said. Go and sing for your papa. They didn't have money for transportation, so Lorenzo walked 0.6 hours barefoot, carrying his father's broken guitar. When he arrived at the city center, the line wrapped around the building. Kids with expensive outfits, polished shoes, and perfect instruments stood tall. Lorenzo felt small, out of place, invisible. A security guard almost turned him away because he didn't have proper shoes, but then an older woman in line, a stranger, placed her hand on his shoulder. He's with me, she said. Every child deserves a chance. That kindness lit something in him. On stage, when Lorenzo finally stepped onto the stage, holding his scratched guitar, the audience murmured. Some laughed softly. Some pitied him. The judges, 4 of the country's biggest celebrities, looked at him curiously. One judge leaned forward. Hi there, what's your name? Lorenzo Santos, Pa. And what will you be singing today? He swallowed hard. Hotel California, Pa. A judge raised an eyebrow. That's a very difficult song. Are you sure? Lorenzo nodded, gripping his guitar as if holding onto his father's hand. Okay, Anik, whenever you're ready. The lights dimmed, the audience fell silent, the world held its breath. The first note Lorenzo began to play, soft, trembling. The missing string forced him to adjust the chords, but somehow, it sounded even more haunting, more raw than he sang, and his voice, fragile yet powerful, cracked yet angelic, poured into the auditorium like a prayer. A voice shaped by pain, loneliness, and love he refused to forget. On a dark desert highway, the judges froze, the audience's smiles faded. This wasn't just singing, this was a soul speaking. Every note carried memories of a father lost to the sea, every breath carried the struggles of a boy fighting to survive, every lyric carried the dream his family couldn't afford to dream. Halfway through the song, Lorenzo closed his eyes, and for a moment, he wasn't on a stage. He was on the beach again, beside his father, listening to the waves, singing their song. A tear slipped down his face, then another, but he didn't stop it. His voice only grew stronger. He judges CRY. When he reached the final chorus, something extraordinary happened. Judge number 2, known for being strict and unshakable, suddenly covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. She wasn't just listening, she was feeling. She saw her own childhood, her own losses, her own struggles in the boy standing barefoot under the spotlight. The audience was crying, too, not because the song was sad, but because he was real. A boy who had nothing, and yet gave everything. The silence AFTR. When the last note faded, the room didn't erupt in applause, instead, a heavy, sacred silence filled the air. A silence of awe. A silence of respect. A silence that only truth can create. Then the audience rose as one, a thunderous standing ovation. Lorenzo stared at them, confused. He had never seen people stand for him. The judges looked at one another in disbelief. Of the golden buzzer moment, judge number 1 stood up, walked toward him, tears in her eyes. Lorenzo, you came here barefoot, with a broken guitar, but today, you broke our hearts open in the most beautiful way. She turned to the others. I think we all know what needs to happen. Then she walked back to her seat, placed her hand on the golden buzzer, looked at Lorenzo, and slammed it. The entire theater exploded into golden confetti rained over him like blessings falling from heaven. The audience screamed. The judges cried harder. Lorenzo dropped to his knees, sobbing into his hands. He whispered through tears, "Papa, I did it." A staff member rushed to the stage to hug him. His mother, brought backstage earlier, suddenly ran toward him. She wrapped him in her arms as golden confetti clung to them both. Two souls who had lost everything, now standing in the light together. The AFTRMATH Lorenzo's audition went viral worldwide. Millions watched his performance, donations poured in, his family moved into a proper home. Leah got the medicine she needed, and Lorenzo, he finally had his own real guitar. But even as fame grew, he always returned to the shore where it began, where his father once sang, where dreams once felt impossible, and where now, he could finally sing without pain.